Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of YNS Live with NFL Thread. We are doing Pivot today with our guest Ian and Crystal Scott, and I'm going to let Cynthia introduce you guys. We're really excited. I love stories, and this is going to be a good one.
Yes, I thank you guys for being here today. I so appreciate it. I heard about, Ian from my husband before I met Ian because he was so impressed that he's like, babe, we got a new coach here at Central. He is an industrial engineer. He is amazingly smart and so cool. I can't wait for you to meet him. And I was like, that is so great. That the idea that he was, an industrial engineer and decided to go back into coaching intrigued me. And then I met Crystal, and Crystal is a force. Like, the family, it's like this clan, and she is right there counting, making sure everybody has what they have, doing everything, not only for her kids, but for all of us. She's just this force of a person, and their story in making this decision to huddle together and go from, the NFL to corporate America to, coaching is intriguing. So thank you guys for coming today. So happy
Thanks
you're
for
here.
having us.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I know when Cynthia, she always shares, everyone that knows that when we do these, YNS Live with NFL Thread and really all my podcast, I'm a super curious person. I know stories connect. And when people hear different stories of how others navigate the world, I feel like sometimes it just feels a little lighter in your own world, or a little bit more, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. So I would love for you guys to start. I know that you met in high school, and my sister, if she's listening, and her husband met in high school, and I'm always very intrigued by that. And so can you tell us a little bit about, where you guys grew up and your high school experience together?
Those are going to be two different stories. There's different versions depending on who you talk to. We actually first met our first day of ninth grade. We had a seventh period biology class together, and I didn't fit underneath the table. So the table was low at my knees. When I sat underneath the chair, my knees hit the table. And I always sat up in the front of the class. So I was sitting in the chair with my back against the window, and there was another chair next to me. I put my feet in the chair. And it actually was Crystal's birthday, the first day of school. And she walked in with all these balloons and everything. And she took my footrest and decided to sit right there. And I didn't know who she was. And so that's actually how we met. And, it was, we didn't start dating until the second half of our senior year of high school, but we were in classes on and off that whole time, and we were friends and all that type of stuff. So that's kind of how that started.
I love it. And I love that you remember that it was biology. I mean, because that was a pivotal point in your, obviously, in your life, that you remember those details with the footrest. I mean, that's pretty awesome, Crystal. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I have a different story. For me, so I had gone from it was actually a lab school. We grew up in Gainesville, Florida. So it was a research school, part of the University of Florida. So we had like less students in our K through 12 than we did in this high school that we met in ninth grade. And so I had decided I'd move to this new high school with my best friend. And so I only knew like a few people, but at the school. So I decided in every class, I was going to go up to the most intimidating person in each class. Cause I was like, okay, if I can like handle the most intimidating person that I see, then, everything else will be easy. So this was the last class of the day. And, I walk into class and there's this little scrawny kid like in one side of the classroom, and then Ian, who I actually thought was like a junior or something. I don't know. He was huge. He was a big dude. And so I was like, well, that kid is like, not intimidating. So I was like, went up to Ian and asked if I could sit right next to him. And of course, he's a nice dude and didn't say, no, that's my footrest. He let me sit there. And then what's crazy is that my one best friend who came to school with me happened to be in that class. but she had come in and sat next to, with some of her friends that she had met over the summer in band. And I was like already talking to Ian and another guy at our table that he knew. And I was like, I'll come sit next to you tomorrow. Well, our teacher, Mrs. Smith, yes, we still know her and her name and everything. She made those our assigned seats. And so we ended up being lab partners that whole year and stuff. So it was, so that's kind of how it started.
I love it. So it really started as a friendship. It really started as a friendship and then developed, which I think in so many relationships, that is so important. I mean, I know you guys have 4 kids. I know with my 3 kids, I always say you want to be friends first because that's what kind of carries you through.
Oh, and then Crystal, is this your best friend that became your sister-in-law?
So, that was later. That was college, but yes. My best friend, my roommate in college, ended up, we were dating brothers and they both played at UF and, we were dating each other and then they got married. We got married. So yeah, my best friend.
So fun. Oh, that's so fun. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. Go ahead.
Can you share so much about, we had talked once and Ian, you were like the valedictorian of your, senior class. Like talk about a little bit about your childhood, because I know you have an interesting story even with your mom and dad and all sports, all everything. Like tell us a little bit about you in that capacity.
Well, there's a long story there. My parents met in college. They both went to Clemson. And my dad is he's a black guy from South Georgia, and my mom is white. She's a military kid from South Carolina, and so they had some challenges with their relationship, and they had me and my brother and moved to Gainesville in the early '80s, right after I was born. So I was actually born in South Carolina, but grew up down in Florida. And then my parents adopted 3 children. So I grew up with, 3 brothers and a sister, and we were all mixed race kids. So nobody really knew except that I'm, 8 or 9 inches taller than my older brother. So that was, always people threw people for a loop when we were growing up. But my dad was a school teacher, became a school teacher. He worked out of the house when we were younger, but he started working at the school. My mom is a civil engineer, and she, worked for the county department when we were kids. And then when I got to high school, she became the public works director for the city of Gainesville. So they've been there for 40 years now in Gainesville.
Wow.
And, so that's kind of the household I grew up in, and being, one of 5 children, it's kind of like, okay, I got to find out what I'm good at and what works for me. And I wasn't a big fan of school. We have a daughter who is quite the same. And my whole goal was to do as good as I could so I wouldn't get in trouble when I went home. Because, my dad was, he was serious about us making sure that we took care of our grades. And I was like, well, I know I can go to school and get a job if I get good grades. And I also will get in as little trouble as possible if I, do the right thing. So that was a part of our education as children, just the way we were raised. And, for me and my brothers, we're all a year apart. And so my 2 younger brothers are actually in the same grade because my youngest brother's birthday is before the cutoff date. So we were all at school at the same time. And my dad would get us up in the morning, and he had these books that would kind of daily devotionals through the Bible. So he would sit the 4 of us down and we would go through all of these stories in the Bible. And then we would have a quiz every Friday morning, and he'd go right down the couch and ask each one of us a question. And we had to get it right. And the bus driver knew what we were doing. And sometimes we're running with our school bags to the bus stop because we're late because we're taking the quiz. And she'd hold the bus for us. But that was a huge part of my childhood as well. And, so that kind of framed who I was. And, who I grew up to be. And that's how, um, I think that's kind of how Crystal and I started to, become closer, before we started dating, because, you start talking about things that are a little bit more personal, and those types of things have an impact. And I wasn't the kid that was out doing different things. Um, I played football, and I went from football straight into basketball season, from basketball season right to baseball, from baseball to spring football, and then spring football right into summer league basketball, and just repeated it every year. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to get into a whole lot of extracurricular stuff either. My dad worked at the school. He became the athletic director during that time. So, I rode to school with my dad. I rode home with my dad. I didn't have a lot of opportunity to get into a lot of trouble either. So, all those things kind of framed and kind of were the building blocks for who I would become as an adult. And I'm still growing and trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So that's all part of the deal as well.
I love that. So I just have to interject because I know and when I say this, I think Cynthia is going to be like, oh my gosh, this is right. Again, what I say all the time is stories connect us. So I'm one of five, and I have a sister that was adopted from Korea. We grew up in a town that was, it was diverse, but not really diverse. So it was very obvious that she looked different. She looked
Mm-hmm.
different than us. I was a baby and she came when she was 3. And I just remember people would be like, okay, oh, who's this? And all of us would be like, what do you mean? That's my sister. And
Mm-hmm.
people would look at us like, okay, well, she looks different. I didn't know, but we never knew anything different. So how old were you when your siblings were adopted?
So I was 5. I was 6 years old. I was like in kindergarten. For my birthday actually just passed, so I was a little bit older for my grades. So my sister, she's about 6 years younger than me, and I was in like kindergarten or first grade. I don't remember exactly. She was a baby, and then my brothers were older. I was 8, and I'm right in between them. They were 9 and 7. And so it's been, those are different journeys. They had a whole lot of
Right.
life experience before my sister did. So my sister grew up, my parents were always her parents. My brothers, that was a little bit different. And I think they had a lot of, unfortunately, they had a lot of trauma early
Right.
on. And that there was some difficulties, for them as they got older, working through those things. But, by the time we got to high school and when Crystal knew us, everybody knew us as brothers, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
nobody knew any difference. The only thing that was weird was that I was so much but I was bigger than all 3 of them. So it didn't really matter.
Right.
So, but it was a challenge. And I think part of that is why we haven't really wanted to live back home in Gainesville too much, because I think there were some, you know, when you are one of five and people start to compare you to one another, and that's not fair, and it can be a challenge in a lot of different ways. And me being, uh, you know, doing the things that I was doing, I think was a little bit of a challenge sometimes for my brothers, and we didn't want our kids to have to, follow in that path.
Right.
uh,
No,
hey,
yeah.
you're so and so's kid. Oh, I know your parents and all, that type, this, that, and the other. We wanted them to have an opportunity to be their own person. I never thought it would be in so many different places.
Right. Well, and it's interesting and right, so many different places. And that's the thing people don't think about, and then we can move on, but I'm very fascinated because my sister came when she was 3 from Korea, which she didn't speak any English.
Mhm.
And, literally had a mom that gave her up to adoption because her father passed away. And you don't think about the traumas that happen, and then as the person grows and being different in a family and, working through that. And so there was a lot of, when I look back, there was a lot of
Mhm.
challenges. There was a lot of challenges and still challenges as she got older. And she has, come on the other side, which is amazing. But it's people don't think about those kind of dynamics a lot. And I appreciate you saying, going back to your hometown when you have, you wanted your kids to have different experiences, right? And we'll get into it. 18 homes, 7 states. Let's just say that, and 4 kids. But thank you for opening up and sharing that. And Crystal, as you were in school with him and he was opening up to you, can you share a little bit about what you remember of that time as well?
I mean, it's funny because, like you said, there's 4 boys. It was like it was the Scott boys and their dad or whatever, in school. And, I was not like Ian. I, was not the valedictorian. I don't know if I hit like 50% in our class, but that's okay. I was definitely the partier. I was maybe a little closer to one of his brothers for that reason. But, so for us, like, our friendship, and we were in chorus together. That was another class we were in together, honey. That's where we like really started to like each other, I think, a little more than just friends. But, yeah, so high school was, like I said, we were just friends. And it was funny because he was always like the good kid, like he was captain of everything, right? But like never cussed, never, went out partying like, some of us and stuff. He was just always like kind of like too good, like, too good for all of us, crazy high schoolers. But he always had like such a great heart. And so I think the one thing I never did was pretend to be somebody that I wasn't. And I'm pretty much the same that I am now. Like what you see is what you get. And so I think a little bit he liked that about me. Like other people tried to, kind of be somebody different to like live up to his standards. And I just threw it out there on the table. Like, this is who I am. Told his dad, this is what I did this weekend. So that was interesting when we started, when he told him his dad he was going to start dating me, right, baby?
Yep.
I feel like the visual of you walking in on the first day with balloons, knowing you, makes me feel like you should always just have balloons because that's how you live your life. Everywhere you go is like you create this kind of party, fun atmosphere with people. And even with the kids, I feel like you should all just walk with balloons all the time.
I know. Well, I do. I feel like no matter where we're at, like my biggest thing is I just want to enjoy life. Like I want to enjoy where we're at for however long we're there and, enjoy whatever. And there's been hard times, we go through hard times, we go through, great times, but, just making sure that we maintain, our joy and, the big picture is that we're here and we have each other. So.
And I don't want to jump through your college experience, which was so fantastic. I mean, just everything in college. I'm going to, Florida, the University of Florida in Gainesville. Leaving early to go to the draft, after your junior year. I don't mean to pass by it, but I just think it's so awesome that you guys got married 2 weeks before the draft. And so if you don't mind, after this amazing college experience, and I'm sure back and forths and you enjoying it just as you always do everything, Crystal, like what was that like making that decision? So let's do this, let's get married now, and then we'll go into this NFL experience together.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, because that was your decision, not mine.
You asked.
So yeah, we dated that whole time, those 3 years, and we had both made a decision to be Christians and put God first in our lives. So there was no physical relationship between the two of us for 3 years, which is unusual for a lot of people.
Right.
And so after my 3rd year of college, there was I got a new coach and there was a new situation, and there was no transfer portal at that time like there is now. And if you leave, you have to sit out. And I was a majority of the way through my engineering degree, and I didn't really want to have to go sit out and, spend another year in college more than I had to, because I knew that your opportunities in the NFL were when you were younger, and the older that you get, the shorter your time frame is. So made a decision with a lot of advice to make that opportunity or just to test that out and go to the NFL and, propose to Crystal the day before that I left to go train for the combine out in Phoenix, which is another great story because I got to meet her older brother, who's about 12 or 13 years older than her. And he and I got to be able to build a relationship. I probably spent more time with him there than she had ever spent with him in her life.
Oh,
So
that's so
that was pretty
special.
cool. So yeah, that was, the getting married part was good because, crazy things happen and, don't know what's going on. And we had been dating for a while. And so, that was important. And, we able to get married. And then when I got drafted, she was able to come up and move up with me to Chicago, which was great. And that's kind of how we got started. And I think that was important, and that was something that we'll look back on. Hopefully, it's always a great decision. We'll be in April will be our 20th wedding anniversary, and people are like, "You've been married for how long?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's coming up." So it's been fun.
Especially my mother-in-law keeps calling Crystal that little girl. Now, who is that little girl?
Yeah,
And I'm like, Mommy, that's Ian's wife.
she's not alone.
Oh.
Not alone. She was pregnant with our second child, and our friends were visiting, and she went to go buy some movie tickets with our friend, and me and my buddy. We were parking the car, and she's texting me, "They won't let me buy the tickets to the movie
because they didn't
it was
think
a
I was
rated R movie."
17.
And, yeah, they thought
They
didn't
thought
think
you were
she
too
was
young.
17.
I mean, that's not the worst.
Right.
That's not a bad
I
thing
know.
to happen right now as you get older. I remember
know.
I was in my family, I was always the one that, I mean, I could always get the beer before even my older sisters. And I was like, that's so cool. And now they're like, yeah, you still look older. And I'm like, all right, son, that's enough.
No. That is so great.
That's so funny.
So, Crystal, here you are. You're in Chicago. Like, talk about that. And where did you guys live?
So when we, so after the draft, Ian went up to Chicago like immediately, right after the draft, and then I came up, or we went up. Did we take the U-Haul up? You came back like a week
Yep.
later, like, and we
We
brought the
drove up in a
U-Haul.
U-Haul with my parents.
Yep, in May. And it was funny. The first thing I remember, and I still remember this, is that we were leaving Florida, and like on the bank signs will have like the weather or whatever. And so it was like 95 degrees. We get to Chicago and it's 55. And I was like, where are we? Like, because I had grown up in Gainesville. I'd literally never moved. Since,
Right.
I was born there.
Wondering that.
Lived there. I was 20. Yeah. So that was the first time I'd ever moved. And so we moved up there, and that was funny. We had a realtor help us, and we found an apartment, but she was like, well, there's no garage. And we're like, that's fine. Like, we've never had a garage. Ian's like, I've had a garage, but we don't use it. Like, it's fine. You don't need a garage. You need a garage in Chicago.
In Chicago, because of the snow. Yeah. Oh,
we had no idea. It was like, so there were days like it was -7, right, baby? And like we couldn't get into our car. You had
I was panicking because I had to be at work and I couldn't get in my door.
Right.
It's like, what is going on?
These Southerners, right? I mean, when you said that, when you said you didn't have the garage, I was like, I mean, I'm New Jersey, Connecticut, the city,
right.
So I'm not Chicago, but like I literally was like, oh no, that's a bad choice. Bad choice. They need that in the snow.
And I went and got like jackets were on sale in the summer, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get a jacket. I like got like a leather jacket. I was like, this is going to be so hot. Like, I never had a jacket, literally never had a jacket. Like we'd have sweatshirts or something in Florida for the couple days that you need it. But yeah, so, I was freezing. I had no idea like that you needed like what kind of boots to buy. Like,
are we frozen?
That's okay.
Is that just her?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Crystal's
Yeah, she'll be fine.
But I think that is a really important thing. Another thing for people to think about, because I know it takes your skin and your bones a little like a while to get adjusted to the cold. And when you're not used to being, if you're literally been in the warm your entire life, that first time it like hurts. I mean, I know my sister lived in California when she came back and I was like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, my body is not like used to this.
Yeah, so it was worse for me the other way. So moving up there, like, so her story is a little different. I went up there in April, and it was 98 when I got on the
Right.
airplane, and the high that weekend during minicamp was 43 degrees, and I was like, "What in the world is going on here?" But you're
Yeah.
playing football and you're running around, and it's fine. And me being a big guy living in Central Florida is tough because the humidity and you
Right.
sweat. I'm like, I need
All
to
the time.
I need to wear 3 different t-shirts every day. And I was like, man, this weather is awesome. I never get tired. I can
Right.
wear whatever. I thought it was great. It just, there was some little things that you don't know that you need to be prepared for once it really got cold, and no, October when it's cool, in November, it's fine, but when it's December and January, it's like, oh, this is different, and,
Yeah.
Right.
so that
But
was
for you, and
kind of a wake up call.
yeah, exactly. And for you, probably in a positive way too, because going through that, I know some of the guys are like, when you're not used to the training camp heat and you're out there working like that, I think you probably choose to be cold than hot, when you're playing like that.
Right.
Well, yeah, I think the warmest day during training camp my rookie year was like 83 degrees, and everybody was like, "Isn't it so hot?" The media people were like, "How did you deal with the heat today?" And I was like, "This is hot." I was like, "Man, this is awesome."
I'm from
We had
Florida.
our bye
Right.
week. We had our bye week early that year because they were finishing up the renovations for the new Soldier Field, and so our first 2 games were on the road, and then we had a bye week the third week of the season. And we went back down to Gainesville, and I went out on the field during the football game there at University of Florida. And after the first half, I called my mom. I was like, "You got to come and pick me up. I can't take this. This is too hot. I got to go back." I had already like transitioned over. I couldn't
Adjusted
handle
your
it
body.
anymore. Yeah,
Right.
so it's actually been worse for me going to the heat than moving up this way. So when we moved
I,
back up here to Michigan a couple summers ago, that was a welcome change for me because that Florida heat and humidity is it's
It can
oppressive for a big guy.
Right. And
exactly.
but it's so interesting because this is another thing that you don't think about, right? And this is why I love having these fireside shows, these live shows, and the people that Cynthia connects with. It's really something you think about, the changing of, picking your whole family up, having to get the dentist. I always go here, Cynthia laughs, like, you move, oh, you got to get the doctor, the dentist, all the things that you don't think about. But you also don't think about the weather and the climate change. And when you're
Right.
used to something, I mean, that's a huge thing now all of a sudden that my mind went to, because really, if you're used to the heat, whether you like it or not, but then you go to this, like, I mean, if you are in Chicago in a cold time and you're not dressed properly, you can get frostbite. Like
It's difficult.
it's like, right. It's no joke. It's not like, oh, it's just a little cool. This is uncomfortable. It's like, okay, if you're not prepared, you can be really, really screwed.
That's
So,
right.
to have all that now, how many, so was this when Crystal was saying that you guys were pregnant with your second? And so I'm sorry if
No, so
No.
that, okay. I didn't think so, but I knew
yeah.
yeah.
No,
Okay.
so I threw that story out there. That's why we were living in Chicago. Our oldest daughter was born in 2005, and that was
Right.
ahead of my third year in the league. She was born in May. It snowed the morning of her birthday, so but by that time we were used to it.
Right.
And so she was pregnant during the winter, and so that was the best time to be pregnant because she was warmer. And
Right.
I like it cooler in the house, so it was nice for me because we didn't have to have the heat on all the time. But we had just bought our house. We were renting the first 2 years, and we bought our house in Glenview, which is like right in between where the practice facility is and where the stadium is downtown. And our neighbors that house was for sale as well. They bought the house at the exact same time, and they had a son, or they were just about to have a son. So, and I can't, Crystal probably knows better than me.
Jack is 10 months older than Skylar.
Okay, yeah. So they were moving in and he had just been born, and we had just bought our house. And so we kind of like for 2 years, kind of like, grew up together and kind of, uh, became a little bit extended family. And then, our younger daughter, they are 15 months apart. So, got pregnant, pretty quickly after the first one, obviously. And then she was born during training camp the next year. And that one was the crazy one because I had actually hurt my knee and I had knee surgery and she was pregnant. So they actually scheduled her birth because I was supposed to be on a plane to go to San Francisco for a preseason game, but since I had
Right.
surgery, I stayed. And obviously, and Cynthia knows, you don't know exactly that time, and the schedule can change, and it's tough to be there all the time. So went ahead and scheduled it, knowing I would be there. And Crystal likes to tell everybody that the doctors took more care of me than they did of her.
They did.
During that one, because I got an ice bag.
Do you need ice?
For
Here,
my
let's
knee.
get you a recliner. Do you need a
Yeah.
pillow?
Oh my gosh.
Obviously,
Listen,
there's always multiple versions to every story.
exactly. Yes. And I want to back up a little bit because Crystal, when we lost you for that little bit, and that was when we were just entering into the league. So I didn't realize you were in your third year in the league before you started your family. And so I was just kind of curious, Crystal, you said when you went into high school, a new high school, you decided that you were going to approach the most intimidating person in the room, in every room, in every class. And I was just kind of curious, how did you enter into the league? What was your mindset in meeting all of the Bears girls and all the NFL girls, coming in from Gainesville, never having left before? What was that like for you?
Well, I was really lucky because when we went into, I don't know if he said this when I was off or not, but no, okay. So when he was drafted by the Bears, there's actually three other teammates were also drafted by the Bears that same year. And there was another guy there from the year before who was drafted the year before who happened to be one of Ian's like kind of like a big brother to Ian, and he would take him to his girlfriend would take him to the airport and stuff like that. So it's funny. Okay, so it's Alex Brown and Carrie had a baby there last year at UF, and so I had met her because Ian was I had never met her before, but Ian was telling me about this girl who takes him to the airport or wherever for games when he was playing at UF. And so one day in the stands, she's like cheering for Ian. So this girl's like cheering for Ian so loud. And I'm like, who is this girl? Like, she doesn't know Ian. So I go up and I'm like, hey, and she's like, oh, she had just had a baby, Tony. And so I kind of met her, but that was like right at the end of the season of Alex's season before he was drafted. And so
You probably grabbed the baby and took the baby the whole game.
Oh, Tony was my baby. Oh yes. I have some good stories about that too.
Oh no.
But so yeah, so I was lucky that I knew someone at the
Right.
Bears, and so she was able to take me in, and honestly, the Bears, like the wives that we were with were so down to earth and so amazing, and it was really cool because we were all having kids about the same time, and that was a really, really special group. Honestly, that was a group that we went to the Super Bowl with, and so we were there for 4 years, and during that time, it was actually kind of cool because one of the wives, a couple of the wives actually got minivans. And so then when I had to get a minivan, I didn't feel so bad because I was like, hey, other wives have minivans too. But like when you have like 3 kids and 3 car seats, you have to have a minivan.
You got to have a minivan. Yeah.
Yeah. And it sucks. Exactly. But like you had these girls who were just like amazing and super supportive of their spouses and their and again, we had so many kids. It was just awesome, like just all being together.
That's, I mean, that sounds beautiful. And you know what, Cynthia, when they were talking about the bears, I know we recently had Carly Teller, who's having her first baby, but she was talking about how welcoming the bears women were too, which is just kind of interesting. I know it's different generations, but like, it's just, it's nice to hear. And that's what a lot of us don't hear, right? You hear the stories of other things. So I think that's awesome that you were, starting your family and you were, and I love like the woman cheering. You were like, who is cheering? So loud.
That was in college.
And that
Right.
was
Yeah, in college.
That was
You're
in
right, in
college.
college, right.
No,
Yeah.
right. But that's just,
Love
it's
that.
just so fun that, you guys,
To
and then the
meet her that way.
connections and then to meet her that way. And also it shows your personality. You went right up like, wait, hi, I need to introduce myself. I think it's so beautiful.
Right. And then, of course, like the U-Haul situation cracks me up. I remember being in the U-Haul with the dog and the kids. I remember one guy at the toll booth said, "Are you running from someone or to someone?" I was like, yeah, it's the season, And I'm thinking, like, does the U-Haul do anything with the NFL? We should have our photos, or we should have the logo on all U-Hauls, because like they get us everywhere we go. So, moving so many times. So now, I know from, your experience in the league, going from Chicago and then going to Philadelphia, going to the Panthers and then going to San Diego. Tell us, like, these were moves, right?
Yes.
Those are big moves.
Yeah, so the big one was to Philadelphia, and I was there first. Unfortunately, I got injured, and that wasn't, I spent the year on IR, and it was difficult to kind of really, I was on a 1-year deal, and it was difficult to kind of really, make relationships in that situation. And so we went from Philly, and we had bought a place in Gainesville just so we didn't have to fight over like whose house are we going to stay at when we go back home. So we're like,
Smart.
we'll have
And
our
both
own
of our
place.
parents still had still had kids in the
Yeah.
house too at that time.
Say we'll have we'll have a place that's our own, and we can go visit everybody. So we actually went from from New Jersey. We were staying in Voorhees, New Jersey, and Crystal actually and my mom with our that was 2007 with our 2-year-old and our 18-month-old, 15-month-old, whatever she was at the time, in the car driving from Voorhees, New Jersey, all the way to Gainesville and putting our stuff in storage. Because at that time, we got our stuff in our house, which was a larger home in Chicago, and we got a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom condo that we bought just for going home in the off season. And all that stuff that we had didn't fit in that condo, so we had to go put that in a storage unit. And so we've got one house in a storage unit, and we're living in another one. And then I went to the next year. We were there, and she was pregnant with our son at the time, our oldest boy, and he was born in April, the end of April. And I got a call like, I don't know, a week after he was born. The Panthers wanted me to come up for OTA. So I go to Carolina, and I'm in Charlotte. And fortunately, we knew people, so I stayed like in their basement through the summer. And then, unfortunately, I go to training camp. I drive from Gainesville up to, Spartanburg, trying to make the team, and was having a great time. And the only time my dad's been at training camp, and I tore my MCL and ended up getting injury settlement. And fortunately, Coach Rivera, who was my defensive coordinator in Chicago, was in San Diego, and they were looking for a backup. And he called me like, I thought my career was over. I drove back to Gainesville, and he called me the next morning and was like, hey, we're probably going to have a spot for you here. Just get healthy and, be out here. So I got the chance to go out to San Diego there in 2008. And again, I was out there by myself for a few weeks before Crystal and the kids could get out there, but they eventually made it out, and we were in an apartment for 2 months, November and December, and then went back to Gainesville. She flew with. We got 3 kids now, so she flew back with them to Gainesville, and or we all flew back together after that season, and then I actually went back for myself to try to find a place to rent for 2009. Which we did. And then she came back out there. And so we had a place that was furnished, but still you need some of the things, right? They don't have everything that you need, especially with 3 kids.
Right.
And so we were there in 2009. And then after that season, that actually went pretty well. That was another U-Haul story because I got cut at the end of training camp, which was like, the best training camp that I ever had. But they said that they didn't think I could, be healthy for the whole year for whatever reason. So I actually was just working out and stuff, and I stayed in town we stayed in town for like the first month of the season, and we had a U-Haul in the driveway, and we were packing it up, getting ready to drive from San Diego all the way back to Florida when I got a call from the team, say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to leave town." Like they're like,
Literally.
don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
My
Uh,
God.
we want you to come in. So it was the bye week. So they actually re-signed me after the first 4 games of the season, and we got to
Wow.
stay and had a really good. I ended up starting most of that season, and we were the number 2 seed. Unfortunately, we lost in our first playoff game. And after that, I was thinking, okay, I got a chance to be here for a few years. And through the whole process, eventually did get to re-sign and was there for the whole off season. And we didn't want to have 3 kids. We didn't want to stop with 3 because we didn't want to have like a true middle child. That was something that we had always talked about. And
Right.
and so Crystal and I got to talking, and I was like, and she didn't want there to be too big of an age gap between the kids because she grew up with big age gaps between her and her siblings, and already
Right.
shared about how close me and my brothers were. So I was like, you start doing the math, and you know, if you want another kid, right? Our life was a little bit too transitory to think about adopting. Not having really a home place that we called home. So she was like, yeah, let's do it. So she, gets pregnant with our 4th kid, our youngest son. And,
Son.
then I got cut right after like Father's Day that summer. And so I don't know, she was like 6 months pregnant at the time. And um, then I was involved with, I got a friend, Max Strong, who played for the Seahawks forever. And he had a sports and leadership camp that he did. And there was his wife is Nez Perce tribe member. She grew up on the reservation in Idaho, and they did a lot of charity work on the reservations outside Seattle. Well, there's
Mhm.
some native tribes people, elders in Alaska that heard about this thing and wanted us to come up and work with their kids. So they flew all of us up to Alaska, up to Barrow, which is the northernmost point uh, in the continental U.S. And that was like my last experience there on that side of the country. We came back and loaded up the U-Haul, and we drove with 3 kids and Crystal being 6 months pregnant. We drove back from San Diego all the way across the country to Gainesville, and I was like, well, what am I going to do now? They told me I was 28. They told me I was too old to play football, and I had to figure out what was next. So I knew I wanted to coach, and I went over, and my agent just happened to represent the defensive coordinator at Florida at the time. So I went in and talked to him, and I didn't know you needed a college degree to be a college coach, which makes sense, but it's not just, you just don't think about it. And, I was like, well, what does my engineering degree got to do with, you know, being a football coach? I was like, that's the only thing that I can finish. Like, it don't make sense to start over. So I went ahead and finished my engineering degree, and that was the end of my NFL time, which is difficult, because you always think that you kind of got an idea of when it's coming, and you hope that you got a chance to prepare. And even knowing that it's not for long, you think that you're ready and you know what life is like once you get done with that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but when it happened, I realized how much of my identity I had tied up with being a professional football player, and that was gone. And it was completely out of my control, which is difficult for me because I have a little bit of difficulty handling stuff that's not that I can't control. I wouldn't consider myself a control freak, but I do like things to be a certain way. And having that happen and all that type of stuff, especially having a fourth child on the way, that was that was an eye opening moment, and that was a little bit scary at the time. And I'm sure Crystal could tell I didn't always handle that exactly the best way, probably. And, but we had been together for a while at that point. We always made decisions together. So it was that was, that was a great thing to kind of learn from and overcome. I learned a lot about myself as an employee, and how to kind of advocate for myself in that way and be respectful, because it was always like, hey, this person says, hey, do this, do that, do this, do that. And, you know, you follow that without question. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but sometimes figuring out how to advocate for yourself in a respectful way that, makes sure that you get what you need and have what you think is right. That's important too. So I learned a lot about that. And I think that helped me in my professional career. Once I did get a job post, football. And
Right. And I want to stop right there because it's important to me, and I hate to stop you, but there's so much in between that time. And as a woman and as a person who loved somebody that went through transition, I was just curious, Crystal, if you could share a little bit about what it is that you guys experienced as a couple and how you handled it and how you worked with Ian, to I don't support him, to be there for him, to allow him to go through this like really true. It isn't a crisis, of time because it's an identity crisis. Talk about your transition.
Well, I think that obviously trying to stay positive was one main, thing that I felt like I really needed to do. And I feel like I've always in our relationship, like he's always been more, okay, I say pessimist, he says realist. I don't know who's right, but I say he's more pessimistic and I'm more optimistic. And so I think that he kind of relies on me to be the optimist because he definitely sees, negative things. But we're okay. So we are completely opposite people too. And so, even like when he, goes into these meetings with the coaches, I hate that I'm kind of a control freak too. Like I want to be in there and be like, but what are you saying? Like, are you asking them all the questions, And I think that we probably would handle it differently. And I remember my mom told me one time, she was, he's got to do, he's his own person. Like I have to let him handle it the way he's going to handle it because I'm not in those meetings and I can't just be like, and after the fact, like, well, did you ask this? Did you ask that? I'm maybe a little more of a fighter and he's not. Generally he's like he said, like he's always been the coach says this, so we do that, like, and I think he's changed in that a little bit because he's still obviously very respectful, but he's learned to stand up for himself. But I think it's hard as a wife to, see him go through that and want to change it, but like that's his life, like that's his job, and just trying to figure out how I can support him and encourage him no matter what happens. Because like Ian said, like he was a starter. Like I'm also thinking like there's no reason for you to not be here. There was there's you deserve these things. Like I feel like he does deserve the best, and he deserved, certain jobs and certain opportunities that he wasn't getting. And that's frustrating watching, the person that you love and how hard he works, what a great guy he is, on and off the field. And, but I also believe that, I believe life takes you exactly where you're supposed to be. And
Mhm.
so I've always, he always messes with me because I was like so excited when he decided to go to the NFL, and that we were going to be able to go to all these new places. Because, like I said, I grew up in one town, and so he's like, "Okay, you prayed for that like way too hard because we've been in way too many places. Like we need to slow down now." but but I really do feel that way. I feel like the people that you meet, no matter how, I mean, we were in Philly for 6 months, and like there are people that we still talk to that we met in Philly. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a reason that you're in every area of life, and it's not always easy to go through, for sure. There's definitely hard things, but I think as long as like you keep that in the back of your mind, like there's a reason for this, like let's just keep moving forward, like maybe we'll find out. And I would tell him that, like maybe we'll figure this out,
Right.
Oh, can I say this story really quick?
Yes,
So when
please.
he was in San Diego, so his first year there, when Ron called him up, and he was there, and like he had his end of the season, like whatever talks or whatever, and he just felt like the coach does not want me to be here. Like I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay here, and I was like, no, like you have to think positive or whatever. And I'm like, 1+1 doesn't have to equal 2. It can equal 4, whatever, like impossible things can happen. He's like, there's no way, there's no way. And then at the end of the season, he finds out that his D-line coach actually ended up getting fired. And his old D-line coach, who we really love and still love, Coach Johnson from the Bears, ended up getting hired. And it's just like, and he ended up staying at the Chargers and stuff. And just seeing how like even impossible things can happen, and those things have happened in our life, and remembering those things. So like I said, when it's hard and we've gone through hard times and things that don't make sense, like really don't make sense, and don't add up, like there's a reason for it, and we just keep moving forward. There's going to be something, that better next,
Right. And I have to say, you can see your faith. I mean, you can see that. You guys spoke about that early. Ian speaking about his dad, the faith is so important. And everything you just said, I know Cynthia's smiling because I'm like, I mean, I say this all the time. You meet people for a reason, and you have to take those opportunities. And by the way, I grew up right outside of Philadelphia in Morristown. So that's where I grew up. Yeah. But where my mind was, so I have a 2005, a 2007, a 2009. I tried to get the fourth kid, but I got a second dog instead. we were older than you guys. My husband was like, oh my gosh, I actually had him do a spreadsheet because I didn't have him do the spreadsheet, but I was like, you have to give me the reason why you don't want the fourth. And he's from one, he was only him and his sister 10 years apart. And I just love the chaos. And he took him a few months, and he came back to me and he said, because this is how many years I would have to work extra to put the fourth through college. And I said, you got it, hon. Okay. I love you. I don't want that. So he didn't. But where my mind goes is, I'm seeing then, Ian, the way you plotted out your story was really beautiful, because I could picture and I could see, and I can put myself in Crystal's behind the scene there, thinking, okay, you have 3 kids, and you're pregnant with your 4th. You're going through hormones and emotions and excitement, and watching your husband, struggle, because it's like, okay, that he belongs there, and where's his mindset? Can you take us through, and especially for, new spouses that are, listening and hearing this, can you give them first give us a little insight of where your mind was and how you navigated it so beautifully? Obviously, you're a positive person. You said that. So, I know that's going to be a part of it, but also what advice you would give to new families that are going through this.
Through transition.
Well,
through transition. Yes.
Well, and, I think at that time, like I didn't think that his career was over yet. Like I thought, okay, well, you're not going to be there this season, but next season. But then there ended up being the lockout. That was the season of the lockout, and it didn't happen. And so I think it took me a while, like after our son was even born, that to think that we were done, like that time was over. And so I think like I said, it was figuring out for Ian too, like what is next? Like where should we go next? Because like Ian said, like no matter how long you're in the league, and it's true, like we went into it knowing that it was going to be over soon. Like we didn't know if that was soon was a year or 13 years or 15, you don't know, but it's soon, right? Regardless. And so, so I think, just again, staying like, okay, I know I keep saying staying positive, but literally like asking, yeah, but like asking, okay, what do you want to do? Like where, what should we do? I think for us, and everybody is different, for us, since he went back into college to get his degree, we got to that point after he graduated. It was like, okay, what do we want to do? We had thought about going into working for our church, and we were actually thinking about going back to Chicago to work for our church and the youth group. We had thought about what were our other options. Let's see, going into engineering, obviously, going into coaching. There's like a few different opportunities, and Ian's a brilliant guy, and so he has always had multiple opportunities to do different things. But we got to the point I was like, well, you just got this engineering degree. Like if you've got to use it, like now you've got to do it. You've got to try engineering, because I know my husband, and he regrets things like if he doesn't do it, like he needs to try it. And so I knew that if he had just gone right into coaching and it didn't go well, then he would have regretted not doing engineering. And I think that for us, like, I just understood. And of course, we did get a lot of advice. We talked to our family, our friends, and but just understanding and we got married. I knew that we were going to be following his career. He was supporting us. And so I know that that's like, I've had friends like, I would never move that much, or, especially once you have kids, like I would never be able to, do that and give up everything. But to me, I was never giving anything up. He was allowing me to do what I had always wanted to do. And that was be a mom. And I didn't have to work, and I was able to, be with my kids and full time. And so, and he's super awesome, and like didn't expect like a clean home and dinner on the table, because that didn't happen very often.
Me either. We all have our talents.
So he's like, I don't know why you call yourself a stay-at-home mom. You're never home.
I love that.
That's a good thing, Cynthia. If you don't mind, I just wanted to point out, because you're talking about the moves, and I think, and this goes, even beyond football. One of the best things that Crystal did, and it's a bit of her personality, but I do think that is important, is the ability to have relationships outside of your household. Is very, very important. And we had a built-in Kickstarter because of our church family. So every city that we moved to, we were able to find people right away, and had people that we could meet and do stuff. But I mentioned like our neighbors that in Glenview that bought the house same time we did. Having people that you are friends with, no matter what your stage in life is, that you can actually have conversations with and get to know, and people that really know you. Because when you do have difficult times, it's important that you have somebody that you can't be fake with, because a lot of us and a lot of our temptations, and especially, for professional athletes in general, and if that's, the crowd that's listening in, one of the things is you always think somebody wants something from you. And so you kind of shut off the people that, are around you, and you try to keep everything close, which has its merits, but you got to have somebody that knows the real you, and knows the real things that you're going through as a couple, right? And as a family, that can help you navigate challenges, no matter what that is, and no matter where you go. And that's one of the things I think that has really helped us, is in every place that we have lived. And, we mentioned how many that is. We've always been able to find some people that we can talk to, not just separately, but together as a couple, and they know us and they know what's going on. And that to me has been one of the biggest keys to us being able to manage all of this through the 20 plus years that we've been together.
I think it's so beautiful and so
important.
wonderful. Yeah, so important because, and also as you guys were talking, Crystal, you mourned a loss as well. You lost, watching your husband go through this, and so people need to think about it. And Ian, I think it's so perfectly said that you have people around that you can talk not just to your spouse, but other people
As a couple.
as a couple.
Right.
And I love that advice. I think that's so important in so many, in all walks of life.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have to, because it's, we can't miss talking about this, because I think it was fantastic to go ahead and pursue, your degree in, industrial engineering and entering into that and, being an industrial engineer and working for, it's Michelin, correct?
Yeah, my first job was J.P. Morgan, and then I went to
Mm-hmm.
Michelin after that.
Michelin after that. So now here you are, and this is fantastic, and God bless. Like, wow, you know what I mean? Talk about like options, So now I wish Savannah was on the show right now because of the way Savannah
Nobody else would get
she
to
gets
talk.
she gets all this energy and she rattles off like everything that Ian has done, and which means everything she has done, everything the family has done, everything
I
her
love that.
brothers
And how
sister
old
has
is
done.
she? How old is she?
16. 16.
Okay.
16.
She's fantastic. And so they're all so smart. They're always reading. They're always smiling. They're always at games. This family is incredible. But now you made this probably in your heart first that you wanted to go back to coaching. So if you could share how you went about sharing it with the family and their reaction to your decision. I think it's important for all families to hear this.
Yeah, so we had moved and living in Tampa, and I was just miserable doing that job. And I remember we went for Christmas vacation that year, and my aunt and uncle, my mom's younger brother, they got to come out because we were in South Carolina, and they came out and visited, and my parents are there, and we're all sitting around the table, and I'm like, man, like it's just because my uncle I don't see very often, and he was asking me, what I was doing and if I was happy doing that and stuff, and we had a conversation, and one of the things that they said was like, well, you're going to be a better husband and a father if you are happy with what you're doing when you're away from your family, because if you're always miserable and you come home miserable, then that's a difficult thing to bring home. And so I started looking for, Chris was like, well, where do you want to live? And I said, well, I've always wanted to live up here in this area. My parents went to Clemson, and I loved going up there in the spring. And I was like, but I don't know what jobs are up here for engineers. So I literally just Googled it. I was like, okay, is there anything up in this area? And the job description for Michelin was like my senior project in college. So I was like, oh, let me apply. So, but at the same time, I had a buddy who's the offensive line coach at Eastern Michigan at the time. He's now the offensive line coach at Western, and that goes at Northwestern. That goes back to the conversation. His sister-in-law was our neighbor that moved in next to us at Chicago, so that we've been close for a long time, and he's known that I wanted to get into coaching. He was like, you need to go to the coaches convention in Nashville. And so I took time off of work, and I was, so I'm applying to a different job. I went to the coaches convention trying to meet people and, let people know that I wanted to be a coach. And I had applied to like some NFL, seminars about coaching, and, they wouldn't let me in. So I was doing all kind of stuff. On both ends. And at the same time, I interviewed for the head coaching job at my high school. And what a lot of people don't know is that, in the state of Florida, they don't pay you very much to be a high school football coach. You get paid to be a teacher, and starting out, that's like $30,000. And for to be married with 4 kids, that's not going to get it done. So I wasn't able to do that, and I tried to be a graduate assistant at a couple different places, and that didn't work out. And so Michelin, the job actually worked out. So we moved up to South Carolina, and the kids were young. Skylar, I think, was in the 2nd grade, and Savannah was in the 1st grade. So the boys weren't in school yet. And so we moved up there as they were moving into the third and the second grade, the girls. And I think Joseph was starting kindergarten. So that's kind of like where they, their first, where they kind of grew up was there in Clemson. But that was okay because, that's where grandma and papa went to school. So they would come up and visit us. And, there were people around town that still know my dad and all that type of stuff. And so that was a bit of an easier move there. And, during that time, I would still, go to some of the coaches' conventions. And I think the football thing really started because my niece moved up to live with us when she was going into her sophomore year of high school. And so she's, I don't know, she's about, was she about 6 years older than Skylar, Crystal? Something like that.
23.
Yeah, and Skylar's 17, so I got it right. She's like 6 years older than Skylar. And so she came to live with us. Well, her homeroom teacher was the head football coach at the high school. So I talked to my boss, and I had a, really good, boss at the time who trusted me. And I said, hey, you mind if I leave early? If I come in an hour earlier to work and I can leave an hour earlier and I can volunteer, coach high school football. He was like, yeah. He's like, as long as you got all your stuff done, I got no problem with that.
That's great.
And I was working in a factory, which I had sworn I would never do. Like, I was like, I don't ever want to work in a factory, but it actually was a great job. And so, but the factory time was, you get in at 7:30 and you're out at 3:30. So like, it was already kind of conducive to doing that. So I got to go volunteer. And, one of the things that's crazy is, I've got an engineering degree and I did well at my job, but everybody wants to ask me about football. And so I spend all of my days at work, in between doing work, talking about football because everybody wants to know and they want to hear these stories. And then I go home, they already know those stories, but they don't care about what I'm doing as an engineer. Like, as soon as I start talking about building a spreadsheet or this PowerPoint presentation I had to give for an automated forklift, they're like, what are you talking about? So there was a huge disconnect between and I'm working 60 hours a week. There's a huge disconnect between that and when I get home and I spend time with my family. So there was always something a little bit missing there. And so long story short, I get to where I'm working on this project team, and I was the senior industrial engineer for the semi-finished part of a tire, which is basically just making the rubber that eventually turns into a tire. And I was responsible for from reception of raw materials to when we sent the rubber to the tire building process for this brand new plant they were going to build in Mexico. And I was traveling to France. I traveled to Poland. I was traveling to Mexico. Was doing all this stuff, and we were getting ready to move to Mexico to start this plant up. So we sat around at the table, and I was learning Spanish and talked to the kids. Say, hey, I've got an opportunity with my job. I was like, I don't know what's next because beyond the project, like, you got to find something to do, and I wasn't working specifically in a factory anymore. So the odds of us having to move were going to be high. I was going to have to find a different job somewhere. And I was like, well, we can do this, or, we can go to Mexico. And, it was one of those things where I think some of the kids were kind of excited about that, being in a different place, and some of them weren't so sure, but they had moved so much by then, especially the girls, where they were like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And then in the midst of that, the University of Florida had some changes on their defensive staff. And I had, and I've got all these relationships that I have been trying to get into coaching and reaching out to, and it just didn't work out. And so I finally got in contact with somebody, and this is it's kind of another long story, but I was actually on one of my France trips, and I got a call from the University of Florida. My boss now, Coach McElwain, was there, and his football operations guy called me and was like, "Hey, can you come down and meet the staff because nobody knows you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm getting on a plane to go to France tomorrow, so no, I can't do that." I was like, "I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks for work, and I can't reschedule the flight at this point." He's like, "Well, the job may be gone," and I was like, "Well." I was like, I understand, but I was like, I'll stay in touch. If you guys don't find anybody, I was like, I will go to Gainesville as soon as I get back. I'll go to Gainesville and, I'll come down and see you. And that's what happened. When I flew back from France, they hadn't filled the
Wow.
job. Crystal had all the kids in the car, and they drove up, picked me up at the airport, and we went straight down to Gainesville. And I sat in the office the whole next day, just sitting there waiting for somebody to talk to. And
I love that.
Jet lagged and all, I'm sure.
And I think because it was Gainesville, and you talk about having faith and being a part of God's plan. I only could have taken that job there because that allowed us to go to a place where my parents were empty nesters at the time, and they let us have the upstairs, so we were able to stay at my parents' house. We threw our stuff in storage, and because I'm a graduate assistant, I'm not making any money. And that's kind of how that got started. I don't think I would not have, I don't think now, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have been able to take that job anywhere other than Gainesville. And if it hadn't opened up there, and if it wasn't for Coach McElwain, during COVID, we'd have been living in Mexico trying to figure out how to get back into the country.
Right.
A couple of years, because that would have been the time that I would be coming back to the country. So it's it's funny how those things work out. But Crystal at that point was like, when they did finally offer me the job, she was like, you either got to take this job now, or because you have that 7-year window from when you graduate that you can be a graduate assistant. And because I didn't graduate till 2012, that's the only reason that it was open for me. She was like, but if you go to Mexico, she's like, if you go to Mexico, you can't coach. And I don't want to hear you talking about being a football coach anymore. And so, one of those few times where she threw that ultimatum out at me. And, I was like, well, I got to take a shot because, I think there's something I can do. And, that was just a Michelin plug. They were really good people, and they understood. They were like, yeah, you got to take that chance. And because of all of that, when I didn't have a job, when my boss left UCF to go to Tennessee and the new staff didn't want to retain me, I went back to work for Michelin in Louisville before I got this job here.
Wow.
And I think I can use it one more time. If things went completely south and I didn't have a job, I could go back one more time, but I think that'll be it. But
it's kind of like a cool correlation. It's like the tires and getting you where you need to go, and kind of like having them there is kind of cool. Yeah.
But and you've seen my family. My family's involved, right? They get to be involved, and so when I go home, right, they know everything about what I'm doing at work. There's not a part of my life now that's separate from the people that are most important to me. And so that's a big thing. And that's something that's a lot of fun that I get to share. And, Coach Mack and Karen, they do a great job of taking care of our families and, making sure everybody's included in what we're doing.
It's a family.
And also, I'm sorry. No, something that he does literally every single year is he sits all of us down as a family and he says, okay, this is where we're at. Like, how are you guys feeling? Like, do you still want to stay here? Do you want me to keep being a football coach? Keep trying this? Do you want me to go back to, the 9 to 5, 7 to 3, whatever? And, do you want me to, but he makes sure that every single one of the kids and me, like that, we are all we all made the decision. We all made the decision to move here. We all made the decision, together. And honestly, if we were all like, we hate this and you're, whatever, you're never home or whatever, he would stop. He would go do something. He's like, cause, his family matters the most, but, he matters to us too. And, knowing that he wants us all to be happy, we're doing this as a family makes it easier when we're moving and, and transitioning from place to place.
Right. And then the fact that you're
Absolutely.
able to do substitute teaching, I think is so beautiful too. So you're able to do some
Yeah.
stuff as well and really do
Yeah.
it wherever, wherever you move. You can substitute teacher, if you have that. So I think that's beautiful. I
Right.
really do.
Right.
Well,
The
when
family
COVID,
is.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. The family. When you say the kids are involved, and the kids are so much a part of our family here at CMU. Every game, everywhere you look, there's one of the kids bringing all the other kids together. They're all running around they own the whole entire facility. They're everywhere, and you can feel like they're little groups, and they're all talking about the game. They're all invested in the game. They're all loving being together because of the game. So I really do. I would be surprised if they ever didn't want that to happen. But I love that the decision was made based on I'm not connecting with my family because they're not interested in what I do during the day. That's pretty crazy and awesome.
I think it is. And so I do have to ask, where has been your favorite place? And I wouldn't say favorite because I hate when people say favorite. What has been maybe one of the one of your favorite memories from a place?
Oh man, that's
climate included.
well, I mean, there's a lot. I think, favorite memories, our place in Clemson was kind of where everybody came to hang out. And that's something that we always kind of wanted. We got really fortunate. We got a great place that our kids could walk to the elementary school because that's the age they were. And they could walk to school and walk home. And we had like a full length swimming pool. So anytime there was a party or whatever, our house was where everybody came to. And we had upstairs and we had a basement that was set up pretty nice. So we could host a whole lot more people in there than if you just look at the house, you're like, you can't have 10 people in that house. But the space inside was really good. And so our house kind of became like the place where everybody came to. And that's something that Chris and I had always wanted. Which was nice, which was why it was difficult moving from there. But my personal favorite place, I love San Diego. I love the weather. The culture is a little different than where we grew up. Being in the Southeast, which was, and it's hard to describe that to somebody. You gotta have to go live in it to kind of know what that is. But I love Latin food, and you get a lot of good, Mexican food in particular there in
Yes,
San
you do.
Diego. But there's a lot of good, seafood, which I love as well. And but the climate is good, and the people were nice, and if I could afford it, that would be a place that I would love to live one day. Love Chicago as well. It's just colder, and so I love. Chris and I always joke, if you could take the city of Chicago and put it in like, North Carolina or South Carolina, that would be like the
Right.
best place,
That's our place.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Got it.
but, those have been my two favorite places.
Love it. Crystal, what about you?
I think, well, Chicago to us, I think it was like the first time that we were like adults, like we were like grown-ups. And so it feels like home, even though we only lived there 4 years and it was a long time ago now. But we still love going back to Chicago and we still have friends down there and stuff. But I'm with Ian. I loved San Diego too. I mean, just the food, and you can get healthy food. I did like my boot camp outside. It was great. And it was beautiful. And so I love that. But I think all of our kids really loved Louisville. We were there for 2 months.
Really?
We loved Louisville. Yeah.
I have relatives that live
Kentucky.
there.
Really?
My aunt lives there. You have an aunt and uncle. Yeah.
It's crazy. And, talking about connections and stuff, where we lived like, our backyard backed up to this like church. And it just happens that our offensive coordinator here, their family lived in Louisville for a time, and their kids went to that school, like the church's school, like years ago. I'm like, that's so crazy, like the connections.
Connections. I love
makes.
connections.
But Louisville is like, I feel like it's like a mini Chicago. Like you've got a little bit of that like city and stuff.
Right. And so I have to ask you, because I'm like my two favorite places are the city. I lived in New York City forever. New York City, but then the beach. Like I'm not an in-between person. Like I either want to be near the water or in like a bustling city. Do you think some of San Diego love was the water as well?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Well,
'cause you're near
I never
Florida.
No,
went
she
in the
can't say that
water.
because she
I
never
never
got
went
in the
in the
water.
water.
It's
It's
too cold. Too
freezing.
cold
It's
for her.
so cold. No, I
Oh,
got
right.
like sunburned in the pool. I was like had goosebumps and sunburn. Like, how is that even possible? Like, it's ridiculous.
She's a Florida girl, ocean
I
Right
am
on.
person for sure.
totally a Florida ocean
Good.
girl,
Yeah,
I,
but I've
but
already explained to you the heat and the humidity there, so
yeah.
that's
And
a problem for
Florida's
me.
so flat, you can't see the beach unless you're on the beach. Where we lived, we were like at the top of like a valley or what, canyon or whatever. So no, not canyon, whatever it's called. And so you could see the ocean like on a clear day, even though we were like miles inland.
I
So
love that.
that was
It's,
cool. Like, it was
yeah.
beautiful.
The temperature
It's
thing makes
awesome.
me laugh because my sister lives in Miami now, and whenever she comes up
Uh-huh.
north, she's always like, "Oh," because we live at the beach in Long Island, and it
Uh-huh.
doesn't really get warm. I mean, it is pretty
It's not
cold
the
all
same.
the time,
Yeah.
even in August. The water is cold.
Yeah.
Well, this is just, I mean, wonderful. Cynthia, go ahead.
I think that the wonderful thing that you have taught your kids is the concept of bloom where you are planted. I think that everywhere you guys go, you leave your mark, you leave your legacy. Everybody knows your family. Your kids are going to continue to do that in their lives because of you guys. That whole energy of like, even if it's for 2 months, I'm going to embrace this place and I'm going to meet everybody that I can, and I'm going to remember them and keep them in my life. That's one thing that football brings to all of us, is the fact that we can go ahead and continue those relationships and fall in love with a lot of places and a lot of people. So I really appreciate how you guys are, because you're raising 4 beautiful children to have that same mindset.
Oh, Cynthia, and and I love how you said that because, right, someone could say, I'm moving and I know I'm going to move again, so I'm not going to completely embrace the place. And so the way you just described that, and it's, the Scots, I mean, that is what you guys do. And as you speak about your children, that is, and I think it's so important because you have to take where you are and make the most of it to be able to live and be happy. Like, why not? And so you both do that. And I think it's beautiful. Well, I mean,
and also know that like nothing is permanent. Like, and it's okay to not like something and to do something else. And I think we try to instill that in our kids. Like, you don't have to know, like Ian said, like, you don't have to know what you want to do at 17, 18, 19. Like, do something, do it. If you don't like it, then change it. If you love it, keep doing it.
Right.
It's okay.
Taught them that.
You don't have to
and
know.
that you're not right. And that I always say, we'll
You're
say
not
to
stuck.
people if they're like, I don't like where I live. Well, you're not a tree. Move.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't have to stay where you are. You're
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
love
so
it.
true, and so I think that you guys
Yeah.
embody that, and I love that. And I'm
You
just
do.
so glad that Cynthia had said you're going to love these guys. And I mean, I always, anyone that we speak to, I love just learning, and stories connect us, and they really do. So thank you so much for joining YNS Live with NFL Thread Pivot here on Fireside. And good luck in the season and everything that you guys are doing. And I mean, our kids are similar age, and I know, teens in the weeds, it makes for an adventure. It makes for an adventure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Look into the music that's letting us out.
Oh
This is
yeah,
very
it's like,
dramatic. Thank you guys so much.